Okay, so in the last session we had a look at Stringer Connect. We brought in an SDR file and we used the 2D viewer to review the survey, see how it looks before committing to creating the points. We used the control editor to shift the survey onto MGA by overriding the coordinates for the control. And then we had a look at the reduced coordinates, and we excluded some points that were duplicates. So what we're going to do now is create the points in Civil 3D. So I want to point out a couple of things. Firstly, in Civil 3D, I'm sure you already know, there's what's known as the description key set. And based on the codes, the software is going to style those points, put it on a particular layer, apply a point label style. So we'll actually update the description key set. So as you create the points, they will be styled. The other thing worth mentioning is we have a Civil 3D surface called NS, and we've attached a point group called Contourable, this point group here, to the surface. So when we import the points, update the point groups, this surface is going to update as well. Now when we go and create the strings, the software will want to know what surface we're going to add the break lines to. So later on I'll show you how the break lines can be added and how we specify what surface they are sent to. Okay, so let's go and create the points. We just select on Create Update COGO Points, and the software has created those points for us. Now it asks us, do we want to create the survey line? So I'm going to say yes. And then what happens is this dialog box appears. So we need to tell the software what point group we're referencing. What point group we're going to add the survey strings to. So Contourable Civil 3D is our point group. The survey line set is set to numeric. That's because the software's looked at our code set and read the defaults, so numeric individual layers. There's some other settings here, but I'm going to leave those, and then I'm going to go and run create survey strings. Now when I do that, the software asks me what surface, Civil 3D surface, do we want to attach to, and I'm going to say NS. So this is where our break lines are going to be added. Now there's two ways to add the break lines to this surface. You can do so by using an FLT file, which is the quickest way. It's a single entry onto the surface. We write out a file with all the break line data. That file just gets updated as you perform edits to the break line, which in turn updates the Civil 3D surface. If you turn that off, then each break line is added individually under break lines here. And the benefit of that is, I guess, you get to see visually the break line entries here. But my preference, certainly for performance, is use of the FLT. So when we click OK, a number of things have happened. Now firstly, we have this event viewer that's updated. Now if the event viewer does annoy you, you can go to Settings, Drawing Settings, and under Ambient Settings General, you can turn off the event viewer, which I'm going to do. Now errors we might get are things like break lines that cross, because we probably have crossing break lines, and we'll need to sort those out at some point. Now if we have a look in CAD, we have our points created, Civil 3D points, and we have our break lines, or our strings, and also our break lines. Now if we go to the surface, we can see that break line FLT file has been added. Okay, on the Toolspace, listed under point groups is the Contourable Civil 3D point group. Now, if you remember, I mentioned something about the idea of linking a Civil 3D point group. If you run through the process that we have through Connect and creating the strings that way, we'll automatically link the Civil 3D point group to Stringer. If I was to right click on point groups and go to Civil 3D point group link, Actually, when we do through connect, every Civil 3D point group is linked, which is fine. But if we wanted to, we could tell the software not to worry about, linking all points or these other ones. And if the software is not linked to it, then it's not going to reread the points in that list. So, on a large survey, you might get more performance because it's this rereading from Contourable. Now we can see that also that this point group has survey strings set to true because survey strings exist. Okay, so let's just go create update to that. So the point group has been linked. The other command I wanted to mention, if you right click on point groups, there's manage point group settings, and we want to manage that for our Contourable Civil 3D. This just brings up the same dialog that we saw earlier. So what surface do we want to add the brake lines to, and do we want to use the FLT file or not? So at any point you go and turn that off, or you could send your brake lines to a completely different surface. So we'll accept that. Okay, so we've still got the raw data editor open, and as I click on an entry, you'll actually zoom to the point. This is where multiple monitors come in handy, but you'll actually zoom to that point in CAD. Okay, and we can go and perform some edits to the points in the raw data, and they'll update. For example, I have this point here 1247. Now, if I want to find that point in my raw data, the easiest way to do it is right click and run search and replace. So I'm going to, and you can search for points using a number of different properties or whatever, but I'm going to say just search for 1247, and that point comes up. And when I click on it, it'll zoom to it in CAD, and it'll also zoom to the raw data entry. Okay. So let's just say, for whatever reason, I want to change the bearing to 195. So hit enter. It's updated the raw data, but the point still exists in the same spot. So we need to go create update, and you can see it shift. Okay, so that entry is now yellow because we've edited that point, but we can see it adjust. So this is really to demonstrate that you have a live connection between your raw data and the Civil 3D points that exist in CAD. What I might just do is put a fade on that aerial imagery just so we can see our strings pop out a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to close Connect, but as I said, at any point you can reopen Connect, make an edit to the raw data. That tree that I edited, let's just go find it again. 1247. So if I wanted to reset that, I can go reset item, but the important thing is that I go create update COGO points to update that point in CAD. Okay, so that's a look at Connect. As I said, that Civil 3D point group is now linked to Stringer. And an important command I wanted to point out was manage point group settings, that allows you just to confirm the surface that we're adding the brake lines to and how those brake lines are being added to the surface. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do is review our surface in a 3D environment. So yes, we could open up Object Viewer and spin the Civil 3D surface around, but what I'm going to do is I'll show you Model Viewer, because we can do a little bit more with the surface. I think it's much quicker, and we can also show our survey data in this environment as well. So if I click on Model Viewer, first greeted with this toggle display form. So the surface I want to show is NS. If I just left it at grass, we're going to see our surface with a rendered material, but I'm going to go to I'll start off by, let's do surface analysis to start off with, and then I'll put the aerial imagery on. So with the surface analysis, if we go to the analysis tab and click on the button with the 3 dots here, we can set up some ranges. So I've set up eight ranges based on the minimum and maximum elevations. And if I go and select on OK, then we can see our surface in 3D displaying with that analysis. Now, the beauty of Model View is you can actually place it onto another monitor, and it'll just update as changes are made. You're not locked. You still have access to CAD as well, even though Model Viewer is open. So one of the great things about viewing your survey in 3D is we can see if there's any obvious spikes that we might need to fix. Maybe there's a dodgy elevation somewhere. We can turn on rendered with edges, which will show us our edges for all our triangles. We can also do some exaggeration. So maybe it's quite a flat terrain and I just want to exaggerate it to see the low points, but let's bring it back to 1. So Model Viewer has a lot of handy features like that. I'm going to go back to rendered and I'm going to click on toggle display and change the style to image from drawing, and I'm going to use this picker and select my image from CAD, click OK, click OK again, and then we can see the aerial imagery draped over our surface. So the next thing you might want to do in Model Viewer is display the points and the strings. And if you go to the Survey tab, you can do that. All you need to do is pick the point group that contains the string data. So for us, that's Contourable Civil 3D. Just so you know, these other point groups here are Stringer point groups if you're using the Stringer COGO point object. But for us, we want to use the Civil 3D one. Label style, I'll just pick survey. And then what we do is we tick on show points. See these points that display. We can go show survey strings, and then we can see the survey strings appear. Now, although we've created the survey strings, there's a few that have some issues. For example, up the top here, we have an out of order string that we need to fix. It's a little bit hard to see that string when we're going to CAD, but this grey string here, we want to put some arcs on it. We've got, where the cricket nets are, we've got this break line string running across to another point, which obviously means there's a point down here that shares the same string number and code as this one. So I can show you how to fix that up. Now, so look, you could leave Model View open with your points displaying and your string showing. As you're editing your strings, moving points around, that type of thing, Model Viewer will just update. Okay. Now, if we go show labels, we can show some labels for number, elevation, and code. So maybe I just wanted, for whatever reason, just to show the code. See that displayed off. I find it can look a little bit messy when you got too much displayed. So let's just turn that off. And the final panel, it's actually pretty cool. What that allows you to do is, for a particular point, you could create a 3D object. So, you know, whenever it finds a tree point, for example, you might have a model of a tree, or certain signage, street signs or whatever. You might have a model of that sign that you can represent in a 3D view. So that's what point to objects allows you to do. The other thing we have access to is the survey manager. This is the survey string manager. And in the next video, we're going to take a look at how we can perform edits to our strings and clean those up. There's a few options to do that. We can perform edits directly from the ribbon here. There's actually some shortcut commands that I'll show you to just edit our strings directly in CAD. But the main interface that I prefer using is the survey string manager. Now, in a previous video, I mentioned the importance of where data is stored for Stringer, and I recommend that all users ensure that pack mode is turned on. So all Stringer data is stored within the DWG file. So if you right click on your file name up the top, you'll see data pack settings. Now for me, because we brought it in using Connect, and actually in actual fact our drawing template's been set with pack mode already on, you can see pack mode is on. So what I recommend you do is you ensure that pack mode is on. You can click on this button to toggle it on, and then all Stringer information will be stored within your DWG file. Okay, so that's covers this video. We've created the COGO points from Connect. I showed you how we can make an edit to the raw data and see the COGO points updated. We've created the strings, but we recognize there's a few strings that are out of order we need to fix, so we'll cover that in the next video. And then we also looked at Model Viewer to display our survey in a rendered 3D environment.